Before I start this video, I wanted to point out something to you that I noticed while in the edit bay, something that really caught my attention. What looks like orbs or rods moving in and out of Gail's head. I've seen this before in other paranormal videos and videos that dealt with UFOs. Here, if you look, you can just see it's streaking because of the speed it's moving at, but it's quite apparent, and it goes in, disappears, and then comes out again. And if you watch this video closely, you'll see this happen over and over again. And at one point, it almost looks like there's a swarm of them. She knew about it. I asked her. She called them elementals. You'll see one start to appear right out of nowhere, right there, straight out of her. Are these orbs? I don't know, but they're certainly not bugs or anything else I can figure out. They're not dust, and they travel with authority.
Hi, I'm Gail, and I'm here to talk to you about my experiences, my ET experiences, alien experiences, galactic being experiences, whatever you want to call them. I'm here to talk about that, and my purpose in talking about it is to normalize people's experiences, to help people come forward and talk about their own experiences. Everybody who's been saying you're crazy, I don't know what you're talking about, and it's been staying on your mind, and you really, it seemed like it was real. So I'm here to talk about my own experiences. And I came from an extremely normal life when this started happening to me. My background is I'm a nurse. I worked in the operating room, and then I went back to chiropractic school, opened my own practice, and then I had to retire from both to help take care of my dad, who had developed dementia. So my life was just going on, just being a healthcare provider all my life. And then my dad finally passed away in late 2019. And that was the first time in my life I wasn't taking care of anybody. It was me time. But one of the big things on my list was to start this meditation stuff. I've been hearing about meditation for years. Well, let me start this. So I started meditating on a regular basis in the morning. And that just changed my life. Now, as I said, I led a real normal life, but I had always been able to know when people who had passed away were around me. I could smell them. I could smell my uncle, who smelled like cigarettes. I could smell my mother, who smelled like watermelon or scupping on grapes. And I have always been able to do that. And I knew, like, so-called ghosts in houses. But of course, I was always dismissed. But anyway, so when I started meditating, things started coming to me, and I could contact my dad. Now, I wasn't too public about my conversations and how I was contacting my dad, but all of a sudden, going from smells, I could actually see him, and seeing him, and then we developed a place where we would go meet. Now, this is all during meditation, your third eye, which I didn't know anything about third eye. I didn't know anything about metaphysical anything at this time, but that's what was happening. As I was seeing him, like, through my third eye. We created a place on a river where we would sit and talk about money matters, which he was really good with money, and family matters. And so that was a very common practice. I could see him, I'd sit next to him, we would just talk, chit chat. And then this went on for several months, connecting with him. And finally, I was telling a friend of mine, her name is Meg, who's a good friend of mine, about these meetings. And she is the only metaphysical person I knew. And I had never gone into or delved into any of that, but she was all in it. So she was my reference point for all my experiences. So whenever I was talking to my dad at one time when I was talking to my dad and I had met up with him, all of a sudden an angel came flying around him and into my face. She was absolutely beautiful. She had big blonde hair. She was all white. And what was so memorable about her is how bright she was. I mean, it was just like bright. And what she was doing was handing me a bracelet. You're okay. So anyway, that was my experience with an angel coming my face. But my experiences keep on going. Um, the next thing, I would say the next event was when I was sitting there talking to my dad, and it was a beautiful place we were at, sitting next to a river, where a waterfall, and we were talking to him, and this little bitty blue being came and sat down next to me. He was on my right side, and she came down and sat on my left side, and I'm looking at this being going, why is he allowing this? Why is he sitting there so calm? My dad was just so calm about it. He didn't do anything. He didn't say anything. He just was looking down and looking around and nothing, nothing. And so this little being sitting next to me, I'm looking at her, staring her. She was only about 5 feet tall. She was really thin. And the most memorable thing about her is she had the top of her head had almost like a crown, and it jiggled when she talked. I called her Jellohead because I didn't know what else to call her. But it was mesmerizing. You sit there, and she was a chatty Cathy. She talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. And I could see her, just her head just jiggling the whole time. And especially when she would laugh or giggle or whatever, that head would just be moving. And so she was very warm and just talking, and nothing really big that she was talking about. So I left. I didn't know what this was all about. But the next time I went to see my dad, probably another week later, I sat down, and here comes another being. And this being looked kind of human, but their skin was almost like a camouflage coloring. They didn't have any hair. They were probably about, I'd say 5'6", 5'7", somewhere around that height, and just almost like a human body, except for the coloring. And of course, there was no hair or like exposed genitals or anything. So she sat down next to me, and she was more, not say cerebral, quiet, and you know, it was not much of a conversation except for introducing herself to me, and anyway, this kept going on. I was meeting different ETs. I met a reptilian. I met a praying mantis. They just kept coming in, and it was like a parade of ETs that were coming and meeting me. Now, I had no idea what they were because I have not, as I said, I've not ever been in the metaphysical world. So every time I would meet one, I would go running to Meg again and going, I know I have a brain tumor. This is what happened. I got to get an MRI. Something's wrong with me. And then she would be reassuring me, going, oh, no, you just met an Arcturian. Oh, no, you just met a gray hybrid. And a gray hybrid is a gray and a human mixture. And that's what my second one was. And then whenever it came to the reptilian, when I met that one, she was like, oh, I don't know about that. You be careful. A reptilian, there's something going on there. You should be worried about reptilians. Of course, I didn't know anything about reptilians, but I told her, I said, my experience with him was very genuine and warm, and I had no ill feelings or anything negative about him. So then she kind of calmed down about it. And so anyway, my whole world was just turned upside down by meeting these different ETs. I didn't understand what was going on. Now, because of all this, I had decided that I was going to do a past life regression. And on my past life regression, it revealed that I have been going up into a spaceship since I was an infant, that I was going into a room where they had a bunch of cribs, and they had one ET, which I think mine was like a Palladian. Each ET had two children, and the other child, other than me, was a boy. So she had a boy and girl that she took care of, and it was probably about, I'd say 15 like incubators, is what I would call it, that were in there. They'd put us in, and they would hook us up to all these tubes, and one at a time. So like she'd be holding the boy, and I would be in, and then she'd pull me out and put the boy in. When we were finished, we were put in a room, and it's almost like I would call it a recovery room for the hospital, but it was almost like a bouncy house, and it was the room was up to like her waist, and so you just put us in, almost like you're putting us in the oven, but it wasn't like that. And it was bouncy, it was soft, and there was a bunch of infants there, and I think that's where we rested before we would go back home. And so that was one experience. And also, I did start remembering some of my experiences. And I do remember trying to walk through walls. And trying to walk through walls, I was probably about maybe 9 or 10. And we were going through different thicknesses of walls. And so it would start off with one cupola, then another, then plaster, and all of a sudden, each person would not be able to make the next one, the next one, the next wall, and all of a sudden I was there by myself. I was the only one that had made it through one of the walls, and the rest of the people weren't there with me, and I was looking around going, where are they? So I remember that experience. So I've been going up to this spaceship. Apparently, I've been in training since I was an infant, and I still, it took took a regression therapy to discover this, because I had no idea that I was having any ET or alien contact until, as I said, 2020, when everything started changing for me. Um, I'm looking down at my notes to make sure I have gotten everything I wanted to talk about today. Um, yeah, as I said, my purpose for coming forward is to make it more comfortable for everybody else to come forward and to start normalizing these events. I mean, my experiences keep going on and on and on, and I'll go into a little bit more about my next thing that happened to me. Um, the next thing, when I was in my living room, and I was not meditating, but I must have been I would say, in a kind of a sleep, kind of going to sleep dream state. And an ET showed up in the living room, and it was a golden being, and he was probably, I think I would say this being was again another one about 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", somewhere around there. And he had gold skin, and it was shimmery. I remember just how beautiful that skin was, just beautiful. And he told me to follow him, and he was talking to me telepathically, because I was going, my mouth wasn't moving, his mouth wasn't moving. In fact, he didn't even have a mouth. I remember that he didn't have a mouth. He had regular limbs like a human. He had 2 eyes, a nose, but no mouth. So we were talking telepathically, and I followed him out of my house into the deck and looked out in the backyard, and there was a spaceship. And I was going, oh my gosh, I'm being abducted. That's the first thing that went in my mind. I'm being abducted, and why am I following this gold being? Anyway, I did go ahead and follow him, and even went up the ramp. There was a ramp to the spaceship, and there was another gold being waiting at the door for me. And I was still, the whole time going up that ramp, going, am I stupid? Am I following this being into this spaceship? Am I being abducted? What is going on here? But I'm following him. I'm going with him. So I entered the spaceship, and I mean, I even hesitated that one last step into that spaceship. I was hesitating. And when, but in the other one was, they were greeting me. So then they took me to a seat at the front of the spaceship, and you could see out like the window and everything. You could see everything. It was almost like sitting inside of an aquarium, because it was glass all around. The spaceship looked like it had actually, you can see it right here. That's what the spaceship looked like. It was almost like it was a bubble in the front, and the rest of it was kind of metal in the back. And you almost felt like you were just suspended in space when you were sitting there. So they sat me in one of the chairs in the front, where I had front row seating, and we took off. And I'm sitting there again going, I don't know, but this is a dream come true to be able to ride in a spaceship. I don't know if I'm being abducted or what's going to happen to me, but this is great. So we took off, and they gave me a tour of the whole spaceship, showed me around, showed me the inner workings and everything. And anyway, they finally brought me back to the living room. And I sat on the couch, and they left, and I sat on the couch and thought, that felt like an orientation. I don't know why that came to my mind, but I just felt like that was an orientation. I was getting an orientation on this spaceship. And so I would say probably about 5 days later, Monto was his name. He showed up again, and Monto wanted me to follow him. Of course, this time I'm off the couch. I'm running out there going, oh, what's next? What's next? What's going to happen next? And so we took off again. And this time the experience was that I got to go outside float outside the spaceship, and we floated around. And he was giving me or teaching me how to float around the spacecraft or spaceship. And of course, he made it look easy. It's not as easy as he made it look, because I kind of would bounce off the spaceship and bounce here. Anyway, I finally did get it, but I sure didn't look coordinated. It's rather embarrassing. If anybody had been taking movie pictures of that, that would have been embarrassing. But anyway, so that was my second trip with them, was that I got to go outside of the spaceship and and just walk free fall out there. So anyway, they brought me back. Now each time they brought me back, I was nauseated, physically nauseated, for about 5 days afterwards. So it had a very much of a physical effect on me, even though this it was more like through my third eye, my mind's eye. It still had a physical effect on me, on going out into these different dimensions and being on a spaceship and being around these higher dimension beings. Really took a physical toll on me. But anyway, I'm going to end. I have many, many, many more experiences, because one of the next ones I will discuss later is how I learned how to fly that spaceship. But anyway, my name is Gail, and as I said, I am a nurse. I'm a chiropractor, but I have evolved into being a medium, a medical intuitive, a psychic. It's endless on the things that have opened up for me with my journey with the ETs. All my gifts have come up and present at this time. So again, I'm coming forth to make this a more comfortable place for people to share their experiences.